All right, hello everybody, and welcome into the second week of the playoff committee meetings. We are at the end of the regular season, and it was a wacky week. Definitely not making it easy on us. So this is the second of three CFP rankings. Last week was our initial rankings, and now it is our end of regular season, where we can now consider division winners. As part of our tiebreakers or things to consider when ranking these teams. We can look back at last week's rankings, but this isn't just take last week's rankings as gospel and then just move from there. We're going to go all the way back through our tiers and reconsider everyone. So sit back and relax. If you have questions, listen to the full VOD before yelling at us in Discord, right? But yeah, so we have this week, we have Zach, we have Jackie Moon from Florida State joining us, and Yui. And we might have more popping in here or there. But let's get started. First and foremost, we have two undefeated teams. Oklahoma won on game day in Bedlam, and then Maryland survived Iowa in a rivalry game as well by 5. So do you guys have any change on those two?
No,
Yeah,
undefeated.
I'm good with that order.
Stays number
That's
one.
1-2.
Yeah, 1-2. I think it's pretty easy. You got to reward the Power 5 teams. All right, so Oklahoma. Except Oklahoma did look beatable.
Yeah, I might be
And,
scared.
and that's the worst they've looked all season. That somebody else might have a chance at beating them someday.
All right, so now we get into this ridiculousness. So this is kind of what we do once we rank the most obvious teams. We're going to go basically through all divisions and write down or shout out who we think is rankable. Obviously, Buffalo's rankable. Florida State. Boston College may be fringe. 8-4 at this point is a rankable type of a record. Georgia Tech, East Carolina, North Carolina. In the
I do
American,
have our rankable list from last time. Of course, it's basically just our top 25. But
perfect. Well, let's see if there's anyone to add on to that. But we got Army at 10-2. I don't think these teams are rankable. 8-4 G5's kind of dead in the water. App State, obviously. In the Big 12, Nebraska clinched the division, keeping their bubble hopes alive. They're rankable. Iowa State may be rankable. Tough loss this week to a 2-win Kansas State team. And then over here, we got TCU. And then Oklahoma State and Baylor both potentially rankable, as Baylor as well got upset by West Virginia. In the Big 10, we've got Maryland, Ohio State definitely. Michigan probably still rankable, but kind of out of the playoff race, you'd assume. Minnesota definitely not rankable after a loss, but they will play in the Big 10 championship. Northwestern, sneaky. Louisiana probably still rankable in the back half, unfortunately. I hate that, but I think we can drop Tulane this week, but we'll still mark them down because 10-2 is a decent record. Nobody here. Nobody in the Independents. In the MAC, you can forget about it. Mountain West, this is disgusting. Air Force wins their division, gets a bowl game. And then UNLV probably still rankable, whereas Hawaii and San Diego State probably not. Pac-12, Washington, California was fringe last week, probably fringe again after a win. Arizona, rankable, and that's pretty much it here from the Pac-12. SEC, Tennessee for sure. Auburn maybe. Georgia maybe after a big win. Oklahoma 12-0. LSU, A&M, and then that's pretty much it there. Coastal, Florida Atlantic probably not, and then Troy probably not. Southern Miss probably not. All right. So do you have a number this week, Zach?
I do not have a number. I didn't record any of the new guys. Nobody really poked out as a new guy, with the exception of Georgia and was it 8-4 team that we aren't going to rank highly anyway, so it don't really matter.
Gotcha. All right. So, well, with that, let me pull up our rankings from last week before we get too crazy here.
And I've got that as well with the tier breaks we had marked in.
Perfect. So, obviously, we want to go back to probably the one-loss teams at this point. So, judging based off last week, we have TCU in this tier. We have East Carolina. We have Buffalo. And then we were considering Georgia Tech, but they lost, so they're going to fall from this tier. And then other considerable team would really only be Washington and LSU because Arizona also lost. So 3 one-loss teams remaining at the top. So you got TCU, East Carolina, and Buffalo. So where do you guys go from here?
I'm okay with that order. I feel like we justified that order pretty well last week.
Yeah.
With, from Oklahoma to Buffalo.
I don't think it changed much with everyone winning pretty decently as well. So
I did
Yes.
want to I wasn't here last week, so I can't comment on how you guys justified 3 versus 4.
Yeah.
But honestly, looking at, I mean, I'm using my against the spread as kind of like a numerical eye test. If you favored big, you should win big. If you're favored small, or if you're favored to lose, just hanging in there is good. ECU is the second most impressive team among all of our teams as far as taking care of business when they need to, whereas TCU is only 6-6 against the spread. I honestly, I mean, obviously their loss looks a little worse with Georgia Tech losing this week, but I would not be opposed to maybe flip-flopping ECU and TCU, but that's just me.
All right, so let's take a look at all 3 resumes, as this is Buffalo, and we got to also remember that Buffalo was on a backup quarterback this last week with against Syracuse, as they survived there. Now, I don't know if you guys want to use the FPI kind of tool that they put in the chat. I personally not going to use it because it considers Clemson like a top 40 win, which I think is kind of unfair. So for me, I'm always going to go by the quality win kind of a test. And where does Buffalo rank on your against the spread?
They're 8-4, so smack between ECU and TCU. TCU is 6-6, ECU is 10-2.
And that kind of makes sense because Buffalo has had a little bit of, I don't want to call it luck, but like that game day against Minnesota, you kind of took a hurdle from Dale Shivers in a, end of game prayer interception against Minnesota. That's still a quality win. They have the quality win against Penn State now, so that's 2. Washington at Washington. Notre Dame's a win, so that's 3. BC is 4. And then Pitt 5. That loss has gotten a lot worse over the last couple of weeks. FSU 6. They won on a prayer again. 4th and goal.
And that one's a quality win, but they were favored to win by 7 or 8, I think, against FSU.
And then easily their best win of the year is the UNC game. So that's number 7. And then Syracuse 8. So 8 quality wins. That is a great resume. They are also division champions, which at this point is something we have to consider. Now moving on, the other team in contention, East Carolina. I can't speak on them. They do have a Cal win. Now that's not a ranked win as we haven't ranked them yet. And then Pitt as well. That's 2. And then the loss to Georgia Tech, and then the win at UNC, that's 3. Tennessee is 4, and then NC State is 5, and then Miami is 6. So 2 less quality wins than Buffalo. However, the Tennessee win and the UNC win are better than Buffalo's 1 UNC win, right? Georgia Tech loss now worse than Washington, and East Carolina doesn't have a division championship. So then if we compare that to TCU, who is now 11-1, they got a big-time win over Texas A&M. That's probably the best win out of any of these 3 when we get down to the rankings, as we did rank A&M higher than Tennessee last week. Hawaii is a good win. Minnesota is a good win if you compare that to Buffalo's win as well. They dominated them. Oklahoma State's a good win, only by 3 though. ISU is a good win. And then Baylor is a loss. And then
that's a rivalry game.
Yeah,
they still put up good numbers.
The CU win. the Kansas win. So that's 7 quality wins, not 77. Now, a lot of these are on the road, and then they have the best ones. So technically, Buffalo has the most wins, or the most quality wins. And TCU has the best individual win. And then ECU has the best group of quality wins, I guess. But then both TCU and Buffalo have the division titles. So how do we rank that?
So for me, I'm kind of in the same spot. I'm also using Rick's RPI tool here. That also helps out with like schedule rankings and opponent win-loss percentages. We all know how fucking crazy TCU's schedule is.
But they also have those shitters sprinkled in. I see.
They do.
I see 4 teams
Tech,
here. I have
an
4
Arkansas.
teams here with double-digit losses, right? So
Mhm.
you gotta take that into
And-
consideration. That's why
And,
I think.
and against,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was
No,
just
you-
gonna say, and against those shitters, they're like 1-3 against the spread. So it's not as if they've won convincingly against the shitters either. Just throwing that out there.
But
Yeah.
I will
to be
say
fair,
we make the spread.
I was going
You
to say,
do.
and
The spread is
with
only
these,
as good as the books. I do concede that. Yes.
and with those spreads, even though they didn't hit the spread, that's because the spread on these games were 30 plus. They won all of these, so they won the SMU. They won by 24 against Texas Tech. They won by 31. Kansas State they won by 23, and then Arkansas they won by 35. So even though they might be 1-3 against the spread, it's because they were favored by 28 or 31 or something. Those where it's like I understand that it's expected that they're supposed to, like you said, good teams win, great teams cover, but there's also it's hard to really discount that win if it's still a 20 plus 30 plus point win.
But don't we feel that ECU would have had to do the same, against Virginia per se? They're going to play shitters too. Difference is, ECU is 6-0 against schedules like that. As far as covering, they're absolutely murdering Clemson, murdering Duke, absolutely blowing Virginia out of the water. Vautech, that's 22 points. That's
None
maybe
of these
like a
are
lesser
good
game.
teams, though.
They're not. But my point is that they're blowing teams out. TCU's beating teams. I don't know.
TCU's blowing them out too. Their spreads are just a little crazier.
Maybe. And it's, as I said when I made this tool, it's only as good as the books that we make, and those odds are going to be a little wonky at the beginning as we're getting calibrated and seeing what teams are good. If y'all want to keep TCU 3, I'm not going to
And I think that the difficult part is that I have of discounting them is because even though, like you said, the spread is only as good as we make it, and part of the reason that the spread was so big on those games is because of that expectation that we had of them, because of how skilled of a team we saw they were, and they went out there and they proved how good of a team they are. They may not have hit the spread, but if you told me that I could beat a team by 23 or 25 or 35, I would still absolutely call that a quality win. I get where you're coming from, and I do like this tool, but when those spreads get to the 20 plus, it's hard for me to say that missing the spread, like a 28-point spread by 2 points, doesn't hold the same weight to me as if they were only winning that game by like 7 or 10 or 12. If they're still winning that game by 22, 23, 25, that's still a blowout. It just isn't as high as the spread showed because of how good of a team they are.
I think where that ends up showing the most is probably in our G5 block, where all of those Coastal Carolina, App State, UNLV tore through the competition, blew out their opponents, but they were expected to be G5 contenders, and so they had these really thick spreads, which contributes to a seemingly unimpressive against the spread record.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, if you guys are advocating through 3 through 5, I'm good with that.
Well,
Just leaving it.
I don't think. I mean, when we split hairs, these are 3 very similar resumes. If you look at even the losses, like Baylor's the worst loss on the board, then Georgia Tech, and then Washington. So it's, it doesn't really. I don't know if it. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but the way these 3, it's gonna work itself out anyways.
Yep.
Because ECU has to drop to 5 at the very. Or, at the very highest, because they're locked out of their conference championship. Now, we're not considering first-round buys yet because none are clinched. But like I said, we can consider the divisions as tiebreakers if we want. It's just kind of how do we want to rank these 3 at this point, as Buffalo and TC are both facing very similar opponents next week. 3 lost Nebraska and 3 lost Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I personally would say that I was going to say I would be fine if we didn't change anything at all, because it's going to resolve itself next week with the conference championship games. But I also would be totally fine if we wanted to. I personally would keep TCU at 3, but if we wanted to flip Buffalo and East Carolina just because of that division title, and then next week if Buffalo were to lose, obviously ECU would jump back up, or we would address at that point. I would also be totally fine with just leaving it as is, knowing that it will resolve itself next week as well.
I'm for leaving it as is, as I said at the start of this. In addition, a little piece that's kind of pushing me towards that is the quarterback injury at Buffalo. I know, last week was very much the resume focused. I always do try to throw in how good is this team right now when we're ranking. And, although he played, really nicely against Syracuse, that's not their starting quarterback. I don't want to move them up over ECU in a week where everything has stayed the same and they've lost a quarterback.
Yeah,
next week they'll probably jump up anyway.
Yeah,
as a Florida State fan, I'm disgusted you just said that.
Well, there is a chance he doesn't play, and it did seem like it impacted that result, as it was only a 7-point win. So, where do you guys want to go? So I'm
thinking 3 TCU, 4 ECU, 5 Buffalo. That's how I feel right now.
Any naysayers?
I would be fine with that as well.
Okay. Next week it should look pretty different.
So
yeah, next week it will resolve itself one way or the other.
Okay, so TCU 11-1. You said ECU 11-1, and then Buffalo 11-1.
Yep.
Now we change.
Now we're into a completely different conversation, because now in this tier, all of a sudden, all these teams have lost. So, because last time this tier was pretty much, there was like a steep drop off from Arizona down to LSU. I wouldn't say steep, but at that point, that was the clear line drawn. But Georgia Tech and Arizona now have both lost. So, Washington and this tier is the only team who has won, and they are the team that might have 2 of the best wins in the country, like the top 2, because they have the Buffalo win, which we think is the 3rd best win in the country, but then they also have Arizona as well. So do we want to just put them there at 6, or do we want to compare like LSU?
I want to look at LSU, yeah.
Yeah, I was
the
just
LS
about to say.
fan wants to look at LSU. What a shock. All right, let's
Well,
take
I
a
was going to
look.
advocate that Washington and LSU should definitely be 6, but we're at 6, right? 6 and 7.
This is 6.
Sure.
Yeah, it seems like where they should fall now.
I would
Yeah,
be
those are
okay
the
with
2 that I
that.
have.
Because the losses that were taken, like Georgia Tech, it's a 3-point loss to a rival. We know Georgia on paper is really good, but they are a 7-win team. And same thing with, or even worse for Arizona, they got beat by Arizona State, so who's a 5-win team, I believe. All right, so here's LSU's resume. They have a quality win over NC State, Rice, technically. The big win is A&M, and then the loss to Oklahoma, and then Texas on the road, and that's it. And Tulane. So 5 quality wins, 1 ranked win if we don't rank Tulane. And then that's
And an
that's
ugly
tough.
loss to Kentucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they
yeah,
both have
ugly
kind of
loss.
unsightly blemishes. Washington and LSU.
And then Washington's
think-
is Clemson. Now I would say a Clemson loss is probably better than a Kentucky loss.
Also, week 1.
Yeah, and then but I would also compare
I
Oklahoma
genuinely
loss a
don't know
lot
which of
better
those is
than
worse
Cal.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But-
and then the Buffalo losses, or the Buffalo win is the best win.
and then
Which one?
none of these teams helped them out. Boise, Oregon State, Stanford. Remember last week we said a lot of these teams could help them out. None of them helped them.
Nope.
So you got 1, 2 for Utah. You got 3 for Arizona, and then 4 for Washington.
Oregon helped them.
Oregon helped them. So that's 4 quality wins. But the top 2 are really good. Does that
I was down on
enough to
Washington.
trump LSU?
One thing I do want to throw out there to to Coach Jackie Moon's credit, looking at the against the spread rankings, both of them are pretty even on against the spread rankings. One of them Washington went 7-5 against the spread, LSU went 8-4, but I think where the big thing is, and they're also pretty even on the shitter against the spread, 4-4. For Washington, 4-3 for LSU, but I think where the big difference maker is, one of the shitter against the spread losses for LSU was their actual loss to Kentucky. I think that using that as kind of for me personally, a little bit of a tiebreaker, that's where I would lean as far as giving it to Washington over LSU.
I prefer Washington as well.
I came into this expecting to prefer LSU. I prefer Washington.
Yeah,
Washington's
I think the wins definitely are just too good for Washington. Now the question is we have to bring it up because if we're ranking Washington 6 and Buffalo at 5, then you have a 14-point win over Buffalo. Do we have to jump them or no? Are we at that point where we consider them in the same
Don't lose to
tier?
Cal the next time, idiot.
No? Okay.
I think that if it was a tiebreaker, I think Buffalo would or I think Washington would get that, but I think with that loss to Cal, that pushes them just a little bit too far back to catch up to Buffalo currently.
Now,
Also,
Did Buffalo-
Clemson common opponent.
well,
Yeah, I was just about to ask, what did
But-
Buffalo do against Clemson?
But that's also the same thing, though, is like if you're comparing, you have to consider head-to-head over common opponents. You know, it's only logical. But I think
Yeah,
for,
that's why we
for this
compare
rank, for this
head-to-head
rank,
and
I think
common
it's
opponent.
fine to put.
An embarrassing loss.
I think it's fine to put Washington 6. But if you're both conference champions, you're both looking at bye games, right? If this is like verse 4 and 5, then it might have to be considered next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, the discussion becomes longer, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so 6 is Washington, and then we're just going 7 for LSU.
Any objections? Anybody we want to look at there?
Not yet. I mean, because now...
Personally, no.
Well, yeah, we can always come back. But now we're looking at... This is now prime bubble spot. So we're looking at Georgia Tech. We're looking at Arizona. We're looking at... not Baylor. Baylor lost. A&M. We're looking at Tennessee. FSU. And Iowa State lost as well. And that's kind of where we
Michigan also
ended.
lost.
Yeah, and Michigan lost. So that's kind of where we drew the tier. I mean, we can consider North Carolina here as well, but...
Can I do my hot takes?
Yeah, what's your hot takes?
My hot takes are as follows. I have believed this since we started the committee. Last week we were doing resume rankings. We are moving a little further this week and getting more into what we feel, what we see. I think a great kind of baseline for the level of like genuine contention and actual talent that these G5 contenders have if we want to look at somebody in the Power 5 to kind of reference it, I think Arizona is a fantastic comp for Coastal Carolina, for App State, and for UNLV.
I don't know about that. I think this is where we'll get into some disagreements. But like, I think that the way we're steering, where if Minnesota wins the Big Ten, then we have G5 teams good enough to take that auto bid from them. But I don't think any of these G5 teams have a resume that's worthy of a at-large rank in the top 12. I just don't think.
I think what we should do
we
is
can
we
look
should
at it.
figure out. I think we should figure out Georgia Tech, Arizona, A&M, Tennessee, and Florida State. I think those kind of seem like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that would potentially still sit in that top 12. And
I'm gonna
and
need
then-
some big time convincing on Arizona.
Well, let's
Okay, fair
just take a look at all of them.
And I say it more as that's kind of the tier, and like you said, plus North Carolina, those, and then so I think we should figure out the first 4 of those, like who would be the 7 or the 8, 9, 10, 11, and then I think it becomes that next tier of that 12th spot is where we really can dig into the G5s in comparison. But I don't think you could really convince me that one of the G5s could be in the top 11. You might be able to convince me on that number 12, but I think we should figure out who number 8 through 11 are first.
Okay, so if we're looking at Georgia Tech,
I don't see a G5 takeover of the top 5. I think we overranked Arizona. I think Arizona G5 are going to end up in the same spot, is what I'm trying to convey.
Probably. We'll see where they fall, but all right, let's just look. Georgia Tech, good win over Army here. They have a head-to-head loss against Tennessee, so this is the same tier. This is where it's now hairy that Georgia Tech lost, because now we kind of have to consider this, since they're all in the same tier. Lost to UNC as well. Now UNC's on the back half of our bubble. We kind of thought, so we can relook at that, though. Syracuse is a good win, so they have 2. And then ECU is the best win on the board that we're considering since Baylor's out right now. So at ECU as well. And then the Florida State win, you got to probably consider that head-to-head since they're in the bubble here too. So that's 4. And then NC State is 5 quality wins. And then Georgia, I wouldn't pay attention to the 21 because if we do rank them, it'll be very fringe. But it's a 3-point loss at home. So there's Georgia Tech. So now let's just cycle through since we're here. Let's look at Florida State. So Florida State, 9-3 now. The Kent State is such a black eye, but win against Syracuse, NC State, Miami, Notre Dame. Those teams all helped them. So that's 4. And then they had a double-digit lead, choked to Georgia Tech. They had a lead, choked to Buffalo. And then a win over Pitt, win over Boston College. So that's 6 quality wins, but they don't have any, like...
Jackie, what's up with that Clemson score?
They don't have any crazy wins.
Hey, that's our first win against Clemson, so I'll take it. 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, doesn't matter. I will take it.
Where'd all that against the spread go?
So what I'm
Hey, we actually covered. Clemson was actually favored in that game by 5 points. Just gonna throw that out.
Huh? Weird.
Well, they were at home, and this was back when you're coming off 2 losses, right? So, and you were 5-3.
Yeah, that makes sense at that point.
Yeah, but then they turned it on, finished out very strong. So, like, when you consider how a
Pitt
team is
wins
playing,
real good.
right?
ECU wins good.
Now, I will say, just looking at the resumes as well, Georgia Tech does beat these guys because they have head-to-head and they have better wins. So, I think wherever we rank, we do have to consider Georgia Tech above Florida State right now.
And I think that's going to kind of be a block move down right now because my narrative around Georgia Tech has been ruined. They will indeed lose again.
Well, let's take a look here. I mean, there's still a lot to consider. UNC. Let's just take a quick look because they're on the fringe. The win over Ohio State has gotten better. They do have that win over Georgia Tech, so
I
NC
hate the
State is a
ACC.
loss. That's a rough one. They do have a very close loss to ECU. They got dominated by Buffalo, so their black eye is better than Florida State's black eye, and then they have a win over Notre Dame. So that is 3 quality wins only. That Stanford win didn't help them at all. So 3 quality wins. I don't know where to put them in relation to anybody else, because their 2 best wins are better than anything on Florida State's schedule.
All right, hear me out. We at 8th position. We just put Texas A&M, Tennessee, Florida State, Georgia Tech,
No.
UNC,
Stop.
all of them. 8th.
Let's look at everything before you start
Let's
riding
go
that
into
SEC.
Let's go to the SEC real quick before we're.
Yeah,
I don't think we
nobody
can.
else here. Yeah, okay.
It's difficult to really tier those 3 against each other.
All right. Well, let's look
So
at Arizona
let's make
first.
it more
Hold on.
complicated first.
So Arizona, we already weren't too high on them, but Hawaii's turned out to be a decent win. Overtime win over Northern Illinois, just not very good. Overtime win versus USC is quality. Oregon's quality. UCLA's quality, so they're helping themselves there. That's 4. The Utah wins 5. And then the Washington loss is fine. Now, remember, Arizona has 1 less loss. But, when you're comparing them to these ACC teams, right, they all have losses to Buffalo and ECU. Washington is similar to those teams, right? But they don't have that other one. Their other loss is more similar to the Kent State loss or that NC State loss, right, with ASU. It is a rivalry game on the road, though. But once again, on this schedule, much like FSU, I don't see a win worth a damn. Your best win right now is Hawaii or Utah. So, okay.
I personally,
it's like I said,
low.
I'm really struggling with Arizona.
Yeah,
I'm low on Arizona.
All right, let's keep looking. Tennessee now, they were on the bubble. They got a lot of things to go their way this week, but once again, they have a loss to Louisiana, the loss to East Carolina. Pretty much everybody has a loss here to East Carolina that we're looking at. Georgia Tech is their big win, so might have to consider the head-to-head there as well. Lost to A&M, there's another head-to-head, but key win is Georgia Tech. Auburn's a decent win. Central Michigan got themselves to that quality fringe. Now, they do have the win over Georgia, so they do have the comparative win and the head-to-head, but that's only 4 quality wins at this point in 3 losses.
But I do think that the quality wins with Georgia Tech and Auburn and Georgia are all higher or better than what we saw than the resume we saw with Arizona. So I put them, looking at that now that Arizona has that loss today, it's hard for me not to put Tennessee above Arizona even with 1 more loss.
I can consider that because, like I said, typically kind of in the history is we tend to reward big wins over, less losses. All right, so here's Texas A&M. Tough loss to TCU, but it was close, and that's neutral site. That's New Heights Classic. They do have the head-to-head loss to LSU, but they have quality win over Baylor. They have the win over Tennessee. They have the win as well over Georgia. They have lost to Oklahoma, right? And then they don't have any fluky losses. All of their losses are in the top 10.
Yeah.
They have a great win. They have wins over a lot of shitters, and they lost games.
I don't know about great. It's not like a Georgia Tech great, but it's a Baylor win. That's top 25.
I was talking about Tennessee, but go off.
Okay, sorry. Tennessee's not a good win either. Let's be real.
Okay,
It's
buddy.
only,
wait,
it's only,
oh,
oh wait,
whoa.
Nick's here. Hold on, I gotta contain my
All
Tennessee
right,
hate.
buddy.
Yeah, and since this is around the range we're thinking of ranking Tennessee anyway, I think all this means to be is a clear-cut Texas A&M number 8.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about the SEC teams, is we kind of like last week. It's LSU, A&M, and Tennessee, and then we kind of pick if anybody else falls around those tiers.
So now comes a bitch. Georgia Tech.
So-
versus
Well,
Tennessee.
I think what's funny about this to me, really quick, is I think that the NCAA engine has ranked these teams actually incredibly well this week.
They have it pretty close to what we were
They have
kind
it
of
pretty
considering.
They do.
On those. I do want to consider. So we have A&M. I think personally, we can lock it in here real quick with a quick vote. But I think my vote it would be A&M at 8.
Yeah.
Are we all there?
I'm there for that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think that the next one to really compare is Tennessee, or basically what Zach just said of Tennessee and Georgia Tech at that 9-10 spot. I would personally have both of them over Arizona. So I think those would be the next two to really see who's next.
Well, Tennessee has the head-to-head over Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
so.
I don't
Yes.
think
Oh, they
it's.
do it. I
think it's
completely
close.
let that go through.
Now
one year and not the other.
You can use the argument to say Georgia Tech should have won that game by 25, but they choked. If you want to do eye test, but I think for me the comparative win to Georgia is enough to take the cake.
Yeah. That's not only the head-to-head, but GT just lost to Georgia, and it's a better version of Georgia Tech that we've seen.
Somehow, just looking at this, I let the fact that it was Georgia Tech that they beat go in one ear and out the other before I said that, so that's my bad.
Now,
It's all good. They're still annoying to compare, even with head-to-heads. And
if they didn't have head-to-head, I would have probably gone Georgia Tech just because they have that win over East Carolina. But I think head-to-head's too strong here. So, yeah, are we all good? Tennessee 9?
Yeah.
Yep.
Gross,
Tennessee 9.
dude. Who let Tennessee into the bubble?
And then Georgia Tech 10. Do we have anybody we want to compare against Georgia Tech?
I think we were. It
Arizona.
It's Georgia Tech.
Okay. All right. I'm good with that. That's who I have above the other.
Yeah,
ACCs.
it's best team best win in the country outside Baylor right now is Georgia Tech. So
and
also
water.
To throw it out there, we did have, this is basing it off last week's rankings. We had Georgia Tech at 6, Arizona at 8. Arizona lost to a much worse opponent than Georgia Tech did. It would feel kind of silly to say Arizona lost to a 5-7 team and Georgia Tech lost to Georgia, and somehow that flips them, flips Arizona above Georgia Tech. So I think that would be the final nail for me in Arizona's coffin of trying to get above them.
Well, so now it's down to, if we put Georgia Tech at 10, we're at 11 here.
What's Ohio State up to?
I think we only have 3 teams at this point that we can really consider, and that's UNC, it's FSU, and it's Arizona. So
I don't think Arizona belongs in the top 12.
All right. Well, let's see. I mean, yeah.
Now, if there are people that are way worse than them and we can't find better, they do belong in the top 12. But right now,
I think,
I'm not.
Regardless, the good thing about Arizona is that it seems like, based on their schedule, it doesn't really matter if they lose in the conference championship, they're definitely out, and if they win in the conference championship, they're definitely in. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't think we don't have to harp too hard on Arizona and where they are, because it truly is really not going to matter come the end of this thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's kind of the same argument we had with 3 through 5, where it's it will resolve itself next week.
Well, yeah, but the problem is right here. We
Mhm.
could be making a massive bubble decision because neither of these ACC teams play another game, and if
These SEC teams are gonna get cold.
and we're at 11 and 12, so if there are any bid stealers like a Minnesota or a Arizona or a any of the lower tier
This
teams.
could be where it flips these teams out.
Well, and there's going to be a group of 5 team as well, and we haven't ranked them in top 12 yet. So right now, 11 would technically be the last in at this point.
We don't have a Big 12 team either.
Yeah, it's
Oh wait, no, we have TCU. I'm smoking crack.
So there's
Wouldn't the loser
a
of
lot
the
at stake
Pac-12
here. We have to take this rank seriously right here.
Wouldn't the loser of the Pac-12 be knocked out though? Essentially, so you're kind of gaining
Well, I
a
would
seed.
I would hesitate with Washington getting kicked out. It would be a conversation. They'd be in the bubble, but they have 2 of the best wins. Like, they'd have a split with Arizona, right? And then they have that Buffalo win. So it's...
I would, and when you say that, and that's a good point, okay, so let's see, the 3 teams that we're down to are Arizona, Florida State, North Carolina.
Well, I'm fine
What's
putting
Ohio State's
Arizona...
record?
I'm fine putting Arizona out of this talk right here. I think that they don't have a win, but here's Ohio State. So they were 20 coming into this week. Now that loss to Georgia looks a bit better now.
Ups to UNC.
They have a win. The Bama game, that's I
Nobody cares. Bama loss is bad.
I consider Clemson and Bama the same. So UNC is a 1-point loss. So here you have to consider head to head, I think.
Yeah.
Texas is their first good win. The close loss to the Terps, and then Iowa, Penn State, Minnesota, Michigan State, and then their best win. So that's 6 quality wins with a Michigan win, but
See,
we're also
here's
not
the
high
thing,
on
though.
Michigan.
I know that's like, oh man, Ohio State 6 quality wins. I think 4 of those are like 6-6, like middle of the pack Big Ten teams, and this is why I always struggle with like, quality wins, because we can say they have, 6 quality wins or whatever, but it's like, do they though? Like, I understand that, yes, but also like, does this make sense? Like, I hate categorizing these as like, Ohio State big 6 quality wins. That's one of the most in the country.
It's also going to
Who do you
balance out
take
because if we
umbrage
don't,
with?
we're not considering Alabama one, but in the FPI they're probably going to be considered like a top 40 team or something dumb. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. I think Alabama is considered a tier 3 school, so they're in the third quarter of teams.
I was against it. I'm looking at a great schedule. Maybe I'm probably coming around to Florida State. Maybe North Carolina above Florida State.
Well,
The problem with Florida State though is also their strength of schedule is not the greatest. Like the
Kent State loss is a black eye, and then them and Arizona are kind of the same. The best wins, like the best win for Florida State is better than Arizona's because Arizona's is Hawaii or Utah. It's 7-5. We have the Boston College win here. You have Pitt, which is I think a pretty hard
both
win.
blowouts.
NC State, Notre Dame, all in that tier. So they're like quality of wins are better than Arizona's, but they don't have a top shelf win.
Which is why I'm feeling North Carolina.
And NC State, they have the Georgia Tech win. They have the
Ohio State win.
Yeah.
And then 2 losses to ECU and Buffalo, which everybody in these tiers has lost to.
And then a black eye.
And, yeah, the NC State, but it's
NC
not
State.
as horrible as like a Kentucky or a
No.
Kent.
Quick
No, it's not.
FPI stat here is that the only 3 teams that we're considering right now, or I guess only 2 teams we're considering right now, without a tier 1 win, which is top 17 teams in FPI, are Florida State and Arizona, which is kind of tough. I know that we talked about Arizona. I don't really like Arizona. I'm not huge on them. I do think Florida State's a team that's like beaten everybody they should and has lost everybody they should. And so it's kind of hard to judge them because the discrepancy between the teams that they have lost to are like a few top 10 teams. and then all the teams that they've beat are like not in the top 25, and so it's hard to kind of gauge where they're at in the middle of that. I don't necessarily think anywhere we put them is bad, but I do reward them for not having a blemish outside of the teams that they should have lost to.
Yeah. But then again, it's like it's a road win over Georgia Tech, a 1-point win over Ohio State.
I think North Carolina goes above Florida State, in my opinion, simply due to the wins. I'm always a big wins guy. I think there's only 2 top 5 losses here, and the ECU loss is not by that much. I think that the Ohio State and the Georgia Tech win are significantly better than what Florida State has under their belt.
Also, though, this is the same case as the Washington thing. Is like if we put Georgia Tech one spot ahead of UNC, why are we putting North Carolina below them when they beat them on the road by 2 scores?
Because I think I understand it's like, oh, they're right next to each other, why wouldn't you put them above? But I do think that there's like, if we're you don't necessarily have to be splitting hairs to honor the head to head, but if it's like, okay, Georgia Tech obviously has beaten some teams where North Carolina hasn't. Like, for example, ECU, that's a common opponent that
I guess
Georgia Tech has beaten that North Carolina did not.
I guess
so,
the logic is ECU win and a division win puts you over head to head. I guess.
Yeah, I think like you can justify it due to the fact that like Georgia Tech has achieved more in this season than North Carolina has, despite the head to head. Because I think like the achievements of Georgia Tech are that much better than North Carolina. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would like to call attention to something here as we look at our top 11, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we're on 11.
Of the 11 teams we have, 8 of them are in the ACC or SEC.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the SEC and Big Ten of the SFA.
Ugh.
This is unsustainable.
Give us our first round buys. Give us our first round automatic
qualifier. Stop. I wanted to look at Nebraska for a second, but I don't see them jumping this far up. Iowa State, why'd you lose?
You know what you have to do.
I think the more we look at it, UNC makes a bit more sense.
Yeah,
I'm UNC 11 here.
Yeah,
I mean there as well.
Yeah, I think.
But under Georgia Tech, right? Georgia Tech, then UNC?
Yes, under Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech 10, UNC 11.
That's what I got.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 12. I mean, 12.
Now the entire field is in play.
Well, I think we go FSU or Arizona for the next 2. And then we consider the G5s.
I'm good with FSU and then Arizona simply because I think FSU
if we put
beat
FSU
everyone
here,
they needed to.
Does that resolve itself with the sheer amount of AAC teams in here?
It does. It does only because between FSU and Arizona, if Arizona loses their conference championship, they're definitely going below wherever FSU is, without a doubt.
I just think that also, like, I know Arizona State's not very good, but it's a rivalry game on the road.
That's fair.
You know, I think that we're selling them slightly short with their one less loss. And I think 8-13 is more than enough of a punishment for that. But I still also think
a 5 ranking drop for a loss to an undefeated or to an unranked bowling opponent. I feel like
3 points on the road to your rival.
So here's
well,
another thought.
I forgot about all their quality wins that have been bringing them up so far.
So here's another thought. If we put Florida State here at 12, then a couple of losses from teams above them, and they do have a chance at that at large. If they're at number 13, it feels like that puts them, because they have to get through the G5 auto bid, potential Big Ten bubble popper, all that, like all those different teams, Arizona or Washington, one of those two. If we put Florida State at 12, I think it gives them a chance to still make the at-large, whereas I think 13 might just be that spot that's one too many to catch up to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm for putting
I
FSU
feel like a
at
3-loss
13, but
team should have a hard time.
I don't think you can drop Arizona past 13. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
fine with
agree.
FSU at 12. Because, like, I don't think Arizona should be, like, basically how I see it looking is FSU now, then we're looking at Arizona, and then probably Ohio State slash this gaggle of group of 5. So
I
Florida
think
State has a great schedule.
Arizona controls its own destiny, whereas Florida State has now hit their final point as far as games played. So that's why I think Arizona at 13, because they win, they earn that spot in. They lose, they're out for sure. Florida State, I think, with the way they played here at the end of the season, I think they've earned that one spot higher, just to give them that
To feel
chance,
good for a week.
to give them a better chance at that final spot, at that final at large. I think that they've earned that spot, that holding spot, I guess, of being a final at large. I think that gives them that holding spot. If Arizona wins, congrats, they get that spot instead. If Arizona loses, they're out of the way. That's personally how I see it.
I do love Florida State's schedule. I think their wins and losses make a ton of sense, which is something I really do like to see.
yes, Kent State loss makes so much sense.
Doesn't it?
Alright.
Yeah, I guess I don't
I
know.
keep forgetting
It feels
Florida State
yucky.
lost to Kent State.
Kent State. It feels
Yeah, no,
yucky, doesn't it?
That's
forgot
the
about
one.
that.
That's the one
Overtime
one big
win,
spot that I
Syracuse.
just
But I just think that the
struggle with.
sheer
4-point
quality
win,
from
Miami.
top to bottom, like we said, a lot of the wins for Arizona are those fringe quality, whereas FSU, while they don't have that top shelf, I think Pitt, BC, Notre Dame, NC State, all were ranked at some point. Miami's Miami, Syracuse, whatever, you know what I mean. So, and they did lead in Georgia Tech game and Buffalo. They had those wins in the bag, and they just fucking choked it. So I think,
If anything, that's a
12
worse mark.
yeah, so I think 12 is at least fair. I think Arizona has to be 13. And then now I think this
Why?
is where...
I think I would also put Arizona at 13. I don't
Yeah.
think we can drop them any farther than that.
I agree.
What have they done to deserve it?
I mean, their wins
They're-
aren't insanely bad either, but they do have more wins than all these other teams. And
They
Hawaii is
are
helping them out.
10-2.
Hawaii is
Yeah.
helping me out.
Hawaii is fine. Bama is a win on here, but you know, Oregon,
Bama is
yeah.
a win.
Oregon, USC. I know it's overtime, but UCLA. Like these are fringe quality wins, right? And then Utah.
All right. Arizona
I
13.
think, yeah. I think-
Jackie Moon, I think you can pop in. You can now talk, because I think we've solidified that they won't be jumping Florida State. Florida State solidified, so you can come back in.
Yeah.
Thank you for making me feel good about myself for a week.
All right. So now,
Hey, you still got a real path, though.
Yeah.
the tier.
Until we remember you lost to
is-
Kent State.
So now the tier is basically Baylor at 8-4. You got Ohio State at 9-3, Michigan at 9-3. Obviously, the head-to-head goes to Ohio State, and then this gaggle of Group of 5 teams. We got Coastal, App State, UNLV. I don't know how we want to attack this, because an overtime loss to West Virginia sucks, but it's an overtime loss.
To West Virginia,
Yeah.
above all else.
So, like, a hot take that I do have, just from it carried over from last week to this week. I am more impressed with the 2-loss Group of 5 teams than I am with the 1-loss personally. But I don't know.
You're
Just throwing that
talking
out there.
like Army? You're more impressed with them over Coastal, App State,
Yes, Louisiana as well. I think Louisiana's schedule is really nice.
I hate Louisiana.
I think
Um,
one issue with Coastal is they literally haven't beat fucking anyone. Like I know they're
All right,
11-1, but like they're
let's look at them
strength
before
of
we get
schedule
the
is dog
slander
shit.
going. Cause all right, so we got Army 3-point loss to Georgia Tech,
They
and
beat App
then
State.
lost to.
Yeah, that's
well,
who they beat. Me.
Not me.
Yeah. So then
Wait a minute.
BYU's a loss. We're on Army right now.
I'm
Just
dumb.
just
I
to
messed up.
just to satisfy Jackie Moon here.
Oh, okay.
App State is okay. So Temple is such a shit win, but okay. App
It's gonna look
State
so
is
nice
the
when they
top
say
shelf
L
win.
App State next week.
Cincy's good. Rutgers is a good win, and Navy. So like 3 of their last 4 weeks have been great. A 2-score win over Cincy, barely beat Rutgers, and then dominated Navy on the road.
They've definitely earned their spot in the top 25 these last
Yeah.
few weeks.
Yep.
I can agree with that. Now, in terms of if they beat App State twice and eliminate them from contention.
Oh yeah. Oh
then-
yeah. Give it to them.
Because remember,
That really puts them in a
bid
good spot.
the bids can only go to the automatic bids can only go to conference champions. So that's why UNLV's kind of shit fucked.
Out of luck here.
Yeah. All right, here's App State. The Oregon win got to quality. There you go, one more good win. The win at Cincy.
2 quality
is good.
wins.
The Hail Mary loss to Army, and then nothing. So 2 quality wins.
Then
And this
conference
is-
play.
And this is the same thing that happened last week. Is then when we compared them to Coastal, Coastal
Oh.
has better quality wins here because they have the Fresno State win, which is whatever, but FAU, Arkansas State, Troy, Southern Miss. Now the Troy was a loss, right?
I will say,
So there's
are
4.
either of those 8 and 4 teams better than like the actual teams I face in conference?
Can I be honest?
Like,
I
nah.
guarantee you, if you go look at like Arkansas State, they're not gonna like. If you go look at who they've played, it's just a load of dog shit. Like I promise you,
Well,
it's
I'm gonna
It
compare.
is.
It's the same schedule as what App State is playing. You know what I mean?
they have not beat a quality team.
There's no tier 1 team on there. There's no
have not beat a
Cincy on
quality
there.
team.
There, hey, hold on. There.
They have not beat
Same
a
schedule
bowl
as
eligible
Yeah,
team.
but once again, it's like still where are the teams for App State?
My
you know
shitters
what I
are
mean?
better than their quality.
No,
Although I can't
That's-
talk, so I'm muting.
yeah, that's
Yeah, but you know who has a top tier win from this group? It's Louisiana, Lafayette. I'm just saying.
All right, we'll check them out just for you here. And I think at this point with
Oh
how
shit, they lost. Oh wait,
so
I
they
have
beat
them at
Tennessee on the
10-2.
road,
Fuck.
they lost
My bad.
ASU, lost Oklahoma, and then you got North Texas, Rice, and then Tulane. Like they have 3 losses though. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That
but they
Houston
beat
Yeah,
North
loss is
Texas.
rough.
But they beat North Texas, and that's about as high a quality of win as we've seen all season. So, now that we got that one out of the way, Louisiana
just-
number 1
and-
overall.
Because we're considering divisions at this point, like I know UNLV still is in the talk, but they have the worst schedule out of any of the teams we're talking about. Florida's terrible. Nothing. Best win, San Diego State and Fresno.
So they have 2 quality
So,
wins. But
They don't have their
yeah.
division, and they're behind both Coastal and App State for me personally.
What
far
about
as-
Army?
The way I treat Group of Fives in the CFP committee rankings is basically kind of like I do in my playoff push is like the G5 ladder, and
You should treat them like teams.
And it's like
We're people too.
I'm not gonna I don't think Army. Even if they beat App State, I just don't think you could put them above Coastal personally. Because while you guys
Insane.
are saying the Sun Belt is complete trash, they also are winning their games.
It just reminds me of like in real life SMU and Liberty this year, where like everyone was sucking Liberty off, even
Well,
though
yeah. But
they played
even-
nobody.
But you can also, if you want to talk about the eye test, when we watch Coastal versus when we watch App State, who's the better team? It's clearly Coastal.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with Coastal. I just
Yeah.
feel like the Army win over App State
But
should hold water.
at the same time, none of these Group of 5 teams we're talking about have top shelf victories. None of them do.
Louisiana does.
Well, yeah, but they're
You
3
know?
losses. Rank them, sure, but I'm not gonna put Louisiana in the CFP race here. I treat Louisiana like Georgia Southern was last year, where they have to have an LA Tech loss and a Rutgers loss to get considered versus Louisiana, right? And that's kind of where we're kind of at the same. It's Coastal and App State battling it out. If they both lose, then that's when we can really dive into Army versus Louisiana. But I still think that they're a back half of the rankings.
I would agree. I think if Louisiana and Army both win, then they definitely get consideration next week, and I think that would give both of them the quality win to give them a huge argument for that auto spot.
Well, yeah,
But they
mean,
need to win that game to earn that spot.
If Army beats App State for the second time, then I think that there is consideration for them versus Coastal. However, Coastal also has the chance to write their only 1-point loss to Troy. So, it'll, yeah.
I also kind of feel like we're heading for disaster in that space. If we continue to push these G5s out of the way, if Coastal and App both clear their names, it's going to get fucked.
What do you mean?
Like,
it's just going to be a talk between the two if they both win.
I think what he's arguing is that if they both are able to win, they might be able to grab an at-large.
Potentially.
Like, they're both going to be effectively half-loss teams.
But once again,
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
they will have beat the only teams that ever beat them.
If you're a G5 fan, you guys are cheering for Minnesota because that would open up 2 automatic bids
can of worms,
potentially. So
I'm rooting for Minnesota.
Yeah.
No, wait, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Never mind. Wait, no. I need Maryland.
No. Minnesota would.
Yeah. Take it back. Take it back. Take it back.
Yeah. Minnesota win would be a bid steal for.
Yeah.
G5.
Wait, what do you mean a bid steal?
Because Maryland is going to get an at-large pretty much, and then another auto goes somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so G5s wouldn't want them to win, right?
No, they would because
G5s would want them to win because it would make sure that it would open up another at-large spot. Well, okay, actually that's a good point. The at-large spot it would open up.
Shrink the bubble, but it would give basically Coastal and App State right now their only arguments. They're not going to win against the bubble of UNC and FSU, but which
I feel like would be absolutely insane for 3-loss Power 5 teams to get in over half-loss G5 champs.
Well, we can talk about that later. But if Minnesota wins, then you have 2 conference auto bids, one for sure for the G5, and then you're in a battle between 8-5 Minnesota.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And 11-1 App State potentially.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I get it.
So you're more likely to win that battle.
So we're at currently
14. Yeah.
So okay, so I think that the 3 that I want to consider here or ask about would be Coastal, App State, and Ohio State. Yeah. I think those are the next 3 on that tier. And does Ohio State's win today jump them to that 14 spot over Coastal and App State?
Well, I think we also got to consider Michigan here and Baylor. And I would say Iowa State is safe to drop to the back.
I'm okay with dropping Baylor, Iowa State, and Michigan here just a little further. Ohio State, I do want to think.
Baylor
also has the best win.
Baylor has the best win, but they have 4 losses.
4 losses.
Yeah, I'm kind of out on Baylor at this point.
They just lost this
nothing
week.
They can. Yeah.
You can't sweeten 4 losses to me. Don't try.
Mm-hmm. And for Michigan, the reason I struggle is I think Michigan, we were having the same conversation last week that we're having about Arizona this week, and then on top of that, they lost again today. So I think that they were already in that similar
Rutgers,
Arizona space.
Troy. Okay, so Michigan has the win over Troy. Coastal lost to them. Rutgers is a win. Texas State, technically. Michigan State, technically. Northwestern. Minnesota, a loss. And then Penn State. So that's technical 6 wins. But if we're comparing to the G5, it's still way more. And then the loss to Ohio State. So if the only teams we're considering here is Ohio State, Michigan, Coastal, App State, UNLV, I think for me, you jump.
Hey,
Ohio
you said
State
UNLV,
first.
not us.
Well, they're still 11-1. We're still gonna rank them, but they're as far as a group of 5 race, they're toast.
Mm-hmm.
I personally would put Ohio State, Michigan, and then the G5 teams.
I would go personally Ohio State, the G5 teams, and then Michigan.
Because for me, like, if you go off resume right now, Ohio State, Michigan are better. Like the special sauce, or I would say the best assets that the G5 teams will have is if they make up for their losses and have a conference championship. That's when they can really make movement. But for now, it's like you're ranking, like, sure, you have 2 more losses, but the losses are against decent teams, and you have like 5 to 6 more quality wins.
And
What
I guess
happened to
where,
this committee?
where
When did we
okay,
become so
hey,
we
wait,
have to protect the Power Five
hey,
from these 3
hey,
losses?
Zach, just a second. I think where I'm looking at it is who has the best shot at the playoffs. Right now, Michigan doesn't. Michigan, there's no chance that Michigan can get into the playoffs.
But it
Coastal and App State both have. Sorry, let me just finish this first. Coastal and App State both have that chance to win, and at least one of them guarantees a spot in. That's why I have them over Michigan. Michigan might have a couple of wins that are better than those 2 teams, but if we're going purely on who has that chance at the playoffs for rankings, I personally couldn't put Michigan above those 2, knowing that they're that 1 win away from making up their only losses of the season and having that shot at the auto spot and potentially an at-large spot where Michigan, there's no way that I can see, there's no avenue I can see where Michigan could get an at-large spot, no matter how insane the results are above them.
Right. And
so that's my argument.
Well, I think we're well past the playoff spots at this point. We're, at least 2 away from the bubble. I think it's more so for bowl positioning, and the fact is Ohio State and Michigan, neither of them have a game remaining and really a chance to impact the resume. Both these G5 teams, though, they have a chance to not only get an auto bid, one of them is going to jump into the top 8, but potentially for 2, or potentially give one of them a chance to potentially push for an at-large if there's like ridiculous amounts of chaos. But
yeah,
I mean, just looking at the teams who are playing, I don't think that like it necessarily matters. They're going to lose and they're going to move behind Michigan, or they're going to go up, and so I don't really care where we rank them right now. But I would say if the season ended today and there were no conference championships, I'd put Michigan ahead of them.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to get angry or frustrated there. I just wanted to make that point. Sorry about that.
Talk your shit, King.
Let them know.
So are we all in agreement of Ohio State is first in this tier then?
Ohio State 14 feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
I
agree.
don't mind Ohio State 14.
Okay, so now where do we go? Because I said Michigan. What do you guys think?
I could see Michigan because I think their strength of schedule is pretty good. I'd have to look at Michigan, but yeah, if you look at Michigan's schedule, I think their strength of schedule it's decent. It's a lot of those 8-win teams, 7-win teams, which are like fine. While I don't know, I say that their strength schedule is decent. I'm looking at it now. It's really kind of eh. Again, they lost to the teams that are above them and they beat most of the teams that are below them. I don't know. I just don't love it. I mean, 7-5
Looking
Minnesota.
Now it is also
At HRS's RPI shit here, the total rating for like schedule and schedule performance, Army outperformed Michigan.
Now I will say, and this is Nick's favorite argument, Michigan was on a third-string quarterback against Minnesota. So
I think
let that
considering
sink in.
injuries is silly. But
What?
I think
I'm also
I agree.
Oh my
I'm
God!
Bill
I
I'm
Depp.
hate
also
you.
a Florida State
Oh,
fan.
my
I think
God.
it's more about what you do on the field.
I gotta start vetting these people who get on
Hold
this
on, hold on.
committee.
All right.
Do you deserve
wait,
to be there?
which team was it that they were on their third string against?
Minnesota.
Minnesota?
They were on their backup for
Yeah.
the majority of the year. They were on their
Okay,
backup
but-
against Maryland. They're on their backup against Minnesota and all
Can I
these other
say
teams.
something here? I don't think that
Are they
the
still on their
third-string
backup?
quarterback. Hold on, the third-string quarterback didn't allow 52 points. Is all
That
I'm
is
gonna
my
say.
yeah. That is my
Well,
point for Minnesota
but
there.
You know having a quarterback injury shits on the defense as well. Because
I
you go
mean,
3
I'm
and
not
out
gonna
every time.
disagree, but like Minnesota's not necessarily a high octane. I don't know. Like Minnesota's not like a high octane offense. I'm not like, you know what I mean?
I'm just saying. Now I will say overtime versus Indiana is a little sus as well, but that's also
Can
a
we-
backup.
Look at the specific game.
Oh, that was-
They played against Minnesota. We can get to the bottom real quick of whether or not it was just a turnover-happy quarterback.
Oh man,
True.
I don't think that
Ooh.
matters too
Oh,
much. But
yeah. No, yeah. You're fine.
what
You're
do you know
fine.
what week it is?
I didn't count.
Watch this guy have like thrown for 2 touchdowns in this game and like.
Please show us
completely
FCS week. I demand BearCave style
This is
FCS
so
week for
funny
watch
to
party.
No.
This is so funny to me. I don't think we've ever
Yeah,
really
there
done
it is.
this.
52-31.
See, so Hodges is the backup.
Well, it doesn't look like he's
so
turning it
and
over.
then
He
we
didn't
got-
turn the ball over.
Is there fumbles or something? Show the rushing.
Let's see, where's the team stats?
Because if it's not on the offense, like I don't.
Turnovers
They
3,
gave up
so he lost 2
two
fumbles.
fumbles.
Interception.
437
Was there
yards.
a special teams touchdown at all? There's a defensive score. That's for
Four.
Michigan. though.
Okay.
And then
Oh, that's for Michigan.
yeah, so they only scored 24 offensive points.
Uh,
all I'm saying
I don't want to
is
whitewash
that
a 3-loss team.
it's not white. It's just considering Michigan is a stronger team than the record says.
I could understand it if it wasn't a 21-point loss and the defense didn't give up 52. I just don't think that that's like a fair assessment to be like, oh, Michigan lost because they had their third-string quarterback
Okay,
in.
but then
And you
also
say
like
that they're a
Michigan.
strong.
Michigan has the head-to-head against Troy, which is directly comparable to Coastal, who lost to them.
That's
And
fair. That's a
that
more
one's
fair
like-
argument than.
I like that.
Rutgers, an 11-point win. I don't know. Did App State play Rutgers? No, I don't think so.
No, unless you want to say last year.
See, you're skirting the good teams.
I didn't make the damn schedule.
Now, Cincy is a decent win. Oregon is a decent win. And then that's it. That's the problem for me with these G5 teams.
And
Is that and
Since he played really well down the stretch, I think so.
Since we have the FPI, can we actually check the strength of schedule, like what the win losses of the opponents are?
Yeah.
so App
my schedule's
State-
dog shit.
So yeah,
Or
App State
what's
is
the number?
0-1 versus
5-8-4.
tier 1 schools. I will
Okay.
say, here's the big thing about App State for me. Of all tier 1 schools, they played the most tier 4 schools with 7. They played 7 tier 4 schools. They went 7-0, but they played 7 of them. They only played 5 that were 3 or better.
Okay.
They went 0-1
Where's
versus
Army?
tier 1 schools.
Yeah, that's Army.
Army
Okay.
is a bit higher. Army actually played 2. They played 2 tier 1 schools. They only played 4 tier 4 schools. Army went 1-1 against tier 1
Right.
schools.
Yeah,
They went
but-
2-0 against tier 2 schools. I don't mind Army. Can we see Army just one?
I
Like,
just
I'm
want to
not
say
gonna-
again, Army outperformed their RPI compared to Michigan. Their final rating, Michigan's
Head-to-head versus App State.
is
Jeez.
Michigan's is 0.602
But what's the win-loss of the
Army's
opponents?
is 0.616 for Army, 74 to 58 for Army. For Michigan, 76 to 56.
Okay, so
So it's a
Michigan's,
two difference.
Michigan, wait. Michigan's schedule is what? 70.
So Michigan played people that had won 2 more times, and
Okay, and
Army
App State?
by far outperformed
Oh, I don't
their
care.
schedule.
I don't care about Army. I wouldn't rank them here.
You're not telling me Army at 15? That's what I'm
No,
hearing here.
I'm not.
I'm
putting Army at
telling
50.
you, Army.
I would be
Army-
down.
I'm telling you,
I'm
Army
joking.
belongs around here.
Please no,
No.
please no. I am joking.
I'm fine moving Army up, but when you're talking about 2 versus 1 loss, like, I don't think.
We're all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But App State is a measly 584, and their schedule is 58 and 74.
Okay, so there's a big difference there. Now, what's Coastal's?
And Coastal is at 62 and 70, so there's a 4-point difference and a 0.001 difference in rating between Coastal
Notably-
Carolina and App State.
Notably,
no
hold
Tier
on.
1 teams.
Or they did. Coastal Carolina did not beat any Tier 1 or Tier 2 teams. They only beat Tier 3 and 4 teams. That's my issue with Coastal, is that they only beat teams in the bottom half of the country.
Yeah, but see, that's
And-
my problem with your dinky rankings. How are you going to rank, like, shitters, like, you know, mid-tier P5 teams above 8 and 9 win G5 teams?
Because they,
Because they have
when
better
you
strength of
actually thing out the strength of schedule and who they're beating and their wins by tier, they come out above those shitters.
That's why this
Yeah, but
matters.
you're giving App State way too much credit for their loss, though. That's the problem. Is like the
What do
only
you
reason
mean?
their conferences are their schedules are comparable is because you have Army on the schedule, but you didn't beat them. Whereas Coastal's is like very similar raid schedule, but they lost.
But they didn't play any tier 2 teams.
I also think it's a little unfair to like discount. I love Army personally.
Also, can somebody else look at this so they can talk about it? Because it's hard to not talk about my team but also talk about the other teams.
I honestly think it's a little unfair to say Army should be discounted because they have 2 losses when one of those losses was a very close loss to Georgia Tech.
That's also fair. I don't think many of the other ones had I don't think App State or Coastal had 2 ranked teams on their schedule.
But see,
That's
that's
2
where you're-
losses.
But that's where you're rewarding
That's
them
2 losses
for
to
having
2 good
losses.
teams,
Like,
combined 6
I'm
points.
not rewarding them for having losses, but I do appreciate that they had a harder strength of schedule. Like, I do want to reward strength of schedule.
well, yeah.
I
and they
think-
played them close.
Well, I think if Army beats App State, there's a big argument to put them over Coastal. But at this point, I don't think you
Yeah. Looking at
go
the
that far.
looking at
I
the
disagree
RPI.
because if Coastal blows out their championship game and Army blows out their championship game, if you rank Coastal over Army, I feel like you're forced to put Coastal in.
It's
over Army.
wrong.
But you also have to consider, like, eye test in this, like, they beat App State on a fluke, and then, yeah, like, that's kind
Hey,
of my
a
argument.
combined 6 points in their losses to good teams,
I
especially
get
Georgia
that.
Tech.
Yeah, I'm coming
That's-
around on Army, but in terms of this week,
I think
I don't-
Army
I
is
think they're
is like right there with Coastal and App. I think they're that top of
They're in the conversation.
true G5 contenders.
Ar-
I
Army's-
appreciate that
Army
they
is
moved
also-
up from 25. So thank
Army
you.
is also the only one that has a tier 3 loss.
They
Yeah, I
also
think
played
BYU.
6.
See, like, how do you put a 7-5 BYU as a like? You know,
They also
Is it
played
tier
6.
3?
You
You're
guys, you
1 and
guys
2
are
teams.
turning us into the BCS.
No, we're not turning
I'd
us
rather-
into the BCS.
I love the BCS. At least there's like numbers.
Oh,
and
there it
backing.
is. This guy doesn't believe in injuries, and he's a BCS
You're trying to turn us
truther.
into the goddamn
And he's
college
an
football playoff.
Andy's an
We're-
FSU fan. Jackie,
We are
I'm a
fully-
statistician for a living, so like numbers are my thing.
How
We
many
are
ACC
fully-
teams is the right amount in the playoff?
I love
We need
numbers.
you want 4
but it-
auto bids,
Um,
TC?
I'll tell you why BYU is a tier 3 school, because they went 0-5 versus tier 2 schools. I just want that's why
We-
Yes,
BYU.
this
we are-
RPI tool is very useful. Please use it. Look at it,
I'm
TC.
not
We
gonna
are
look
here-
At it.
We are here to become the VCS, the vibe check system. That is exactly
I'm all
As
for the
Coastal
here for
Carolina
vibes
should be
only.
sentenced
But
to the
I'm
Shadow
not.
Realm.
But I'm not here for you guys saying that I have like a top 40 win versus Clemson. You know what I mean? At some
No, I
point,
get what you're
No,
saying.
that's
Like,
the
you
other
have
one.
to-
That is the other system. That's
Yeah.
the
But
ATS.
you
We're
called
on
it. You called it a quality win to beat Clemson, but top 40
did
to
not.
top 60 is there? Yeah, you did. You said Alabama and Clemson.
You did. You
Quality
I
win.
said
Clemson-
that they're comparable,
No.
but I don't count them in my quality win system.
So
No,
I
no,
will point out,
you
while
said-
you were
you-
counting
no,
your wins, you did count it as a quality win, and while you were counting
No,
other
no.
people's, you didn't.
No.
No.
He did. I will defend him on this one. He did say that they are that Alabama and Clemson are comparable
He
when we were
absolutely did say
talking
that.
when we were talking about later down the line. But he didn't
Yeah.
say it as a quality win. He just said they were comparable.
Yes,
I-
he-
fair enough.
they were,
I
they
will
were
give him
used
that.
to be good, but now they're bad.
I
Yeah.
took that as like it was like a quality win light, where it's like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
all
No,
right.
I get where you're coming from.
I will be honest. I 100% think Clemson is a quality win. I don't think they're not a quality win. They have their opponent record was 81-50.
Yeah,
like
I am looking at their opponent.
And Michigan's is 5 worse. What? And they're
Okay,
not
Oregon
Clemson-
has a
Clemson.
higher number.
Clemson also is the only one with a tier 3 loss.
All right. Enough of the
They are
numbers.
1-3 against tier 1,
Enough of
1-3
them numbers.
against tier 2,
Give me the
0-1,
rankings.
0-1 against tier 3. So that's another one where they are on that. They're at number 39, and here they're barely in that tier 2. And yeah, I wouldn't personally be able to say that's
Okay.
a quality win. I think
I'm
it's a better team than the record shows. I don't think it's a quality win.
I think this has got to be some
We're-
form of the
we are way
G5
off-
here.
we are way
off
track.
Muting now.
I'm
It's got to
happy
be
with that.
somebody.
I vote Michigan and then Coastal, then App, and then we talk about
That's
Nebraska
nonsense.
versus
No.
we talk about Nebraska versus Army. But
I
I
would
don't care.
patently reject.
But I don't
Michigan.
care if you decide to put Coastal and App State above them, because next week they would jump them anyways. But
If we're
I
using
think
this,
Army has to go above Coastal in my
what
opinion.
are you saying?
Okay. I'm gonna disagree.
I agree.
think. Can I? Okay. I want to do this. I want to go Michigan. I want to go App State Coastal. Either one.
No.
I don't care. No. I'm saying AB. I want to compare those two, and then I think past that you put Army.
I just think
the hate
I
for
think-
the Sun
Giving
Belt
Army
is
a chance.
disrespectful.
I think
The
that
Sun Belt should try having tier 1 and 2 teams.
I think that Michigan kind of I would vote for them at 15 as well. Now
Yes.
use it. Surprise! Using the stats actually flip me on Michigan. So apparently the vibe check isn't as strong as I thought. The stats put Michigan back up there for me.
See, I like Army more than Michigan here.
No, I think it's Michigan at 15.
Not here.
okay. I like Army
yeah.
here. I'm gonna be honest, but if you guys want to put Michigan, fine. I just think that I'm not impressed with Coastal. I like Army over both App State and Coastal.
Okay.
Plus, I think it might sort itself out with the Army App State game.
I think. Yeah,
I
was gonna
want
say,
a vote on like who thinks Army should be ahead of Coastal or App.
I think probably right now
I
they
do
have
not.
beaten us. They have a much better performance. They have much stronger schedule. They did better on their ratings.
I agree. I actually think Army should go above both of them. I'm being so dead ass. I
Right,
think they
and-
have a general better schedule. The
And
American,
to add
the
to
American.
that, I think Michigan should also go below them.
Like
I
I,
don't
agree
think-
with that.
I
Oh,
can't-
and
We're
2
gonna
against
disagree
tier
on
1
that.
teams. That's fine.
you
And
got
you know
everybody.
what?
Okay,
Yeah.
you got
Yeah.
everybody
Rule.
disagreeing with you on that. I'm
That's
gonna say
fair.
that.
Yeah,
It's all right.
that one's out.
I
That's
agree with
fine.
you.
That's
I agree
democracy.
with you. But majority rules, I feel like we should put Michigan here, and then the three of us, Nick and Zach, just agreed that Army should go after Michigan. I think that should
Agreed.
be the
No,
top.
Yeah.
So
Two.
you're jumping for a Navy win. You're jumping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spots over these guys.
Hey,
I think
After
we've
they
misjudged
both,
Army.
they both
to
just
consider the
won.
last rankings.
They just
I
both
wasn't
won
here for the last rankings,
55,
and I was
20
high on Army.
in like
I
54.
was the only Army advocate last time. I'm still here for them.
That's absurd.
That we shouldn't consider.
Oh, I disconnected. Here comes Seinfeld.
Jesus,
What the hell
Jesus
is that?
Christ.
My God.
Okay, this is like such a chaotic. Okay, I'm gonna try to shoot from the hip here. I do think Army has a much better strength of schedule than both of the other ones. That is why I'm putting them in here. They do have the win over App State. I don't think you discredit that. I think you go Army. I think that's a very valid reason. I think I am not considering what happened last week. So for that reason, I'm putting Army here. Deadass.
So here's
And-
if we wanted to put Army ahead of App State, I would get that because championship game would figure that out. It's going to resolve that. If both Coastal Carolina and Army win their championship games, do we feel that Army is the better team to get the auto
No.
bid as a 10
Yes.
or as an 11-2 versus a 12-1 Coastal Carolina who would then beat the only team that beat them?
Are you punishing Army for scheduling Georgia Tech to start the season? Essentially. I
Not
feel like-
really. I'm saying is
I'm
that
punishing
your
for losing.
guys' view of the Sun Belt is bullshit.
Is
Wow.
Okay.
Wait, where is
my
where is-
view of the Sun Belt is backed by data. What's your view of the Sun Belt?
Well, so
I'm
TC,
looking
but
at
you,
three
Roy-
8+ win teams. You beat a Fresno State team on the road, who's a good team.
And I don't see a single one
and
that
it-
would beat any of the teams
and
above
you
them.
lost by
7 and
1
5
point on
team is a
Watch
good
Party.
team.
Okay, so
Whereas
here's another
Army,
spot.
And
Sorry,
guess
you go
what?
ahead.
I don't play into the triple option dick ride fest over here with
but I don't think
Army
you can.
versus Georgia
You
Tech.
can't
It's a
discredit
week
them for
one
their
game.
play style, though.
Okay, so here's the thing. If
You
we
get
throw
a
out
fluky dick
if we throw-
win,
if we throw out the Georgia Tech loss entirely, if we throw that one out just for the second, not for the full argument, but just for a second, then what we're left with: loss versus BYU, loss versus Troy.
which I would give is equal, except
Also look
Troy
at
is a
wins.
watch party game, and Troy is on an absolute roll after losing their first.
You think
what was
Troy
it,
better than
4
BYU?
games? I think they're
If we
compar-
go-
I
if we're
think
going
they're
our-
in the same whatever. The same
Yeah, I was
tier.
gonna say, if we go
What's
RPI.
Coastal's best win? Because
Okay.
App
Our-
State is a pretty
RPI.
darn good win.
You know what? I've been swayed because I think we could have this conversation later. Because here's the thing: I think we can have the conversation later if we do one thing. I think we put Coastal above both Army and App State, and then if we were to give, Army or App State the nod over Coastal come next week, we would have the argument that, hey, we saw that they beat Coastal, we saw that they beat Army, that we saw that they beat App State, and we jumped them ahead versus they only beat Troy. I think we could do that. I don't think that's controversial. I think that we're so split ends right here, that we're so like hair trigger right here, where it's like, okay, we don't really know what we're doing. They're all very close to each other. And I think that like it is valid to look at these teams after conference championships more in depth. And the way to make that open is to put Coastal in front and then have the winner, basically both the teams that are in the AAC below them, the next two up. And I think you put Army over App State. So of these three teams, it would be App State as a third. But I think that you only do that because of the head-to-head. I think that's the best way to solve this quickly and without a bunch of chaos.
I would
So
vote
my-
for that as well.
My
Like,
last
we are so
reservation is just that if there's a case where Army wins by, let's say, 15, but Coastal wins by 40, are you really going to have Army jump Coastal? Like,
No,
there's
I'm
a
not saying we
That's the
would. I'm just saying
discussion.
we would have the discussion.
I don't know. I feel like you almost take the discussion. Like, Coastal has the ability to
I'll tell you
shut
what.
the discussion down.
If Army beats me, there will be no member of this committee pounding the table for them harder than me. So
Alright.
I will have to be convinced before we let that one slide next week.
And do we basically go into, do it this way of Coastal, then Army, then App State, knowing that it's there, even though the rankings will show 16, 17, 18, it's basically
It's
16,
really
16A, 16B, and 16C.
Yeah, basically.
As long as we basically agree to go into next week knowing that those three the two AAC teams might have a lower ranking technically. We're not taking that lower ranking into account. It's just those three are the teams right there, and those are the three that we need to make the decision on next week.
I think it's the most justifiable ranking that we have. Yes, that we would be able to have the most open discussion next week, where we wouldn't be tied to, oh well, last week we ranked them here, or XYZ. We could say, okay, let's really truly look at everything. If we pick this team, it's because of their conference championship. If we pick this team, it's because we already ranked them ahead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'll
I'm
go
a little
with-
hesitant here for something we're too deep to talk about.
I'm
that
not.
is next week. One of these teams is going to be 8th.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's how we resolve this in the moment.
Coastal 11-1, Army 10-2, App. Okay, so
So now we're 19, right?
Yep.
yeah, we're at
19.
19 teams still alive. You have Baylor, who we had 10 last week. You have Iowa State, who we had 14, and then you have UNLV. You also have Nebraska, who won their division. They have to pretty much be ranked because they're playing for a CFP spot this week. Oklahoma State, who put up an okay performance against Oklahoma. All your favorites, Louisiana, and then Tulane. But I don't really want to rank Tulane. They don't have a chance.
Yeah, I would.
I think shooting
It's
from.
time to stop the Baylor slide.
I keep saying shooting from the hip here. I'm actually gonna argue for UNLV. I think it's just hard in any conference to go 11-1. I know that they don't have like the craziest wins, but I do think that they deserve a decent ranking for going 11-1.
Wow, that's a horrible schedule.
Yeah, only good wins are SDSU and
One.
Fresno State. I mean, it's the same amount of quality wins as App State, though. So it's like we said last week, it's comparable. That's why they were slightly below. But yeah, they are locked out of any CFP talk unless there's mass chaos at the bubble.
You
But
say comparable. I say Army loss, not comparable to Hawaii.
I that's another
they
going back
both
to the
lost.
we're not going to roll
Fluminense.
back.
We're not, and we're fine there. Don't
But
worry.
yeah, so I think we compare UNLV. I think you got to compare Nebraska, who's 9-3, where their best wins are Kansas, and then Mizzou, that great win, the 6-0 win at Oklahoma State, and then Iowa and Colorado technically. And then, so I personally think Baylor is still above Nebraska just because of the TCU win is the best win in the country. Competed well with
Either's
A&M.
4-loss. I can't put a 1-loss team above a 4-loss team.
I mean, but
It wouldn't make
TCU
any
win.
sense.
They also have an Iowa State win. So, like, personally, I think you just kind of have to.
I would put Baylor above UNLV personally.
Like, I know Baylor's better than UNLV.
I don't care where UNLV is because they're not moving.
No.
So,
I'm okay with Baylor being above simply because I like rewarding wins and strength of schedule.
Great win. Best
Yeah.
win.
I think that you kind of, the Iowa
And
State
they've fallen
loss,
from 10th to 19th. They've fallen 9 spots.
See,
Yeah.
Iowa State, I personally put below Nebraska despite the head-to-head because this Kansas State loss is so terrible.
That is
ugly.
so stinky.
Now, I know
we're-
Iowa State is on their backup quarterback, but at the same
Then why rank them
time-
at all? I don't want
Oh, well, hell, that might as well be a win.
I don't want to rank them.
Okay, wait.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're
I
like
mean,
2
it
hours
is.
into this.
Like I said, I wouldn't hold you against a loss unless it's a team like that, My practice squad guy should take down Kansas State.
I would also put Nebraska over Iowa State now that they've won the division. Even though they
That's
lost
true.
the head-to-head, they are now the division winners. So they have
Okay, so is
gotten
it
that division crown.
is it going to be UNLV or Baylor right now?
Personally, I have Baylor.
Baylor.
I can take
That's
Baylor
cool
all
with me.
day.
All
Yeah.
right. Baylor.
And then UNLV next. or do we want to keep looking at Big 12 teams like Nebraska?
I think here it would either be UNLV or Nebraska. What do you guys have?
Let's take division champ Nebraska.
I'm fine with Nebraska, but I think also, like, if we're talking about, like I said, group of 5 ladder, this is where you would consider Louisiana above UNLV because they technically still have that chance to make the power or make the playoff in a worst case scenario.
That's a very good point.
So I'm fine going. I think we could go Nebraska. Then you do Louisiana, UNLV.
Louisiana has the most quality loss in the country with a 1-score loss to OU.
There you go. Well, along with Oklahoma State, but theirs was 8 points. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as good.
So okay, so
seven's better than 8.
Maths.
Nebraska 9-3, and then Louisiana.
Boys, I'm gonna be so honest. I trust y'all to finish this up. It is midnight for me.
Yeah,
I
go
gotta
for
wake
it.
up early.
Yeah, as I say,
Have a good
let's.
night, boys.
You too.
Okay, and then UNLV at 11-1. Okay, so we have 3 spots left, and from our old rankings last week, we have Iowa State, who I still think we should probably rank because they
3
do.
spots left?
Because
Yeah.
I have 19 Baylor, 20 Nebraska, 21 Louisiana, 22 UNLV. After the App State.
Do we like Nebraska above UNLV?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have them
Okay.
above both, just because they can still make the playoffs, so they could jump.
Yes, that's right. The division. Yeah. Division.
Yeah.
So Iowa State,
UNLV.
and then Nebraska, we ranked. Oklahoma State, I personally still think we should probably rank them. I mean, they put up a decent fight. You're a pick 6 and a safety away from beating Oklahoma.
I like them better than Iowa State.
I was going to say I would put Iowa State ahead of them, but I don't think that we should. But I think Oklahoma State should stay in.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about unranking Iowa State.
Well, did they play? No, they did not. I mean, you have the Baylor win, though, for Oklahoma State. TCU loss was close. Kansas win. The loss to Nebraska.
Worst game of all time. I can put them below Nebraska. They should be in front of
I'm fine with them below Iowa State because we can say the Iowa State injury. Because remember, this is a team that had some good wins. Cincy, Iowa, Nebraska mainly. So
Jackie Moon, our guy who does stats for a living, what's the math say?
on Iowa State. This RPI.
Yeah, so I have been extremely low on
Iowa State
Baylor, which I
35th.
think we already moved on from. But Iowa State, honestly, have done pretty well against the spread. I'm okay with them here. Who was the other team?
Oklahoma State.
Who?
RPI has a clear favorite here. Oklahoma State tags in at 20, just underneath like State in these rankings, while Baylor is down at 38th and Iowa State is up at 35th.
I'm gonna
And
be
they are
honest.
both.
Oklahoma State was like 3-2 in top 25 games against the spread. That's pretty good. Like they've held their own against a lot of good teams. I'm okay with Oklahoma State.
I take Oklahoma State over Iowa State 7 days a week. I don't even think Iowa State deserves a rank.
I think that's fair. Now, I don't know about unranking Iowa State, but okay, OK State here. Now, the team I want to bring up for the final spot, since we are dropping Tulane, is Cal. They're the only other team we considered last week because Minnesota lost, and they lost to ECU by 10, whatever. They went on this terrible 3-loss streak, but they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row, including Washington, and they dominated Washington.
I want to throw you a counterpoint. Cincinnati.
No, you're just trying to buff up your strength of schedule.
I'm looking at RPI. Cincinnati has a harder schedule. They're both tier 2 teams. Now, what
So
Cal
you want
has
to
is a tier 1 win
rank Cincinnati over Iowa State, even though they lost to no.
Oh, did they? Did they? Okay, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. I didn't know they had the loss to Iowa State.
So, yeah, 2 spots left. I mean, is there anybody else besides Cal we'd want to consider against Iowa State? And
How did Boston College do this week?
that's another 8-4 team. I mean,
They beat
won.
Pitt.
They won
They
in overtime.
Do we have Louisiana on there yet?
Yeah, we put them at 21. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to take a break. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
this
good.
is
No,
this
you're
is
okay. You're
at
good.
this point. I think we're gonna have to kind of hop into a similar mindset of these guys are so close. Looking at RPI, the people that we don't have in the top 25, like that show as a top 25 performance, would be Cincinnati, Cal, and Hawaii and Oregon. Now, I don't think 6-6 Oregon is going to be our choice, or 4-loss Hawaii. Well, 4-loss Hawaii coming back from injury could be a good pick here.
Hawaii is
Actually.
an interesting team because they have a lot of
They're a
momentum.
different team here in the second half.
And
because
well, if you look, so they do have that direct loss to Cal. So the only way I think that we can get over Hawaii is, or get
If
Hawaii
we-
over is if we unrank Iowa State.
Yeah. But
I'm
that
okay
those,
with that.
Two losses,
And those
very
first
close
three-
losses.
yeah,
I
That
think
Nebraska, or who's the loss they lost to? San Diego State.
San Diego State.
but yeah, then like
One,
these teams at the middle wasn't Joe Webb and Malika Fruz out.
yeah, but injuries don't matter.
I'm not the one who says that.
I stand by it.
They were both there for the first 3 games where they lost by a combined 12 points against some of the best teams. But then once again, past that, there's no quality wins outside Fresno State and UNLV, which UNLV is a great win. I would rank them
I
when
like
they
'em.
win the
I
Mountain
like
West,
'em.
but
Okay.
so like their best win
Yeah,
is
I can see that.
UNLV, and Iowa State's best
I
win
guess-
is Nebraska, and we have Nebraska ranked ahead of UNLV.
You want to
So
go Cal or Hawaii?
And they're
or
both
Sin? I guess
4 losses.
I would personally argue Cal at 24,
They've been fringe.
Boston College at 25, and Hawaii basically at 26.
You're just dropping the ball on the Cyclones. What has Boston College even done?
Not too
Colorado.
terribly crazy.
Lost to Buffalo.
Yeah.
Where are their wins? Notre Dame's
Yeah,
the first
yeah,
one.
no,
They beat
Next one's
Yeah,
Going
they
tier-
beat
tier one.
Syracuse, and then Pitt.
Penn
That's
State is a
3.
quality win right there.
I like Hawaii, and I like Iowa State over this.
I like
Yeah,
Hawaii
no.
and Cal better.
Yeah, now that I can see the full schedule, I'm less on board with Boston College.
I think California has to be one of the teams. We
Yeah,
agreed.
I think
I-
that's.
Yeah.
I think that we could put Cal at 24 and then decide basically between Iowa State and Hawaii for 25.
And my vote goes Hawaii now, if you excuse me.
I'd go Iowa
I go
State.
pull my cat out of a cat.
All right, Cal. 8 and 4. I mean, it doesn't matter. If we want to push Hawaii, I don't really care.
What do you think? What do you think, Jackie?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
You guys want to give Hawaii the benefit of the doubt? I mean, I think that they're going to get ranked anyways if they win their championship. I think all conference champions will wind up ranked.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But why would I rank a team that just lost to Kansas State?
Well, that's
Yeah,
what we're gonna.
Yeah, I think that we could put Hawaii at 25 and that would be an understandable place for them.
Okay, just a quick once through here. Oklahoma, Maryland, TCU, ECU, Buffalo, Washington, LSU, A&M, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, UNC, Florida State, Arizona, Ohio State, Michigan, Coastal, Army, App State, Baylor, Nebraska, Louisiana, UNLV, Oklahoma State, Cal, and Hawaii. Yeah, that's a slog. But
I knew 9 through 20 was going to be a shit show.
Yeah, this
week.
bubble is horrible, but it's still gonna get bad if there's
Chaos.
I was gonna say there can be a lot of popping going
I
on
actually-
this upcoming week.
I feel
the
relatively
bubble-
safe in my area.
I feel like the bubble's actually gonna if chaos. I feel like bid stealers would actually help the bubble, because then teams like Florida State wouldn't even have a chance.
Yeah, that's true. It's
And-
just well, the thing is you have 3 teams basically that are technically in the field right now: Tennessee, Georgia Tech, and then Arizona is just outside now. But those three, if they lose, that opens up more bubble spots for other teams. So yeah, it's just it's a headache and a half. But all right, we finished this. I'm gonna get the graphics done. Don't leak rankings until I post them, right? And
Oh shit, my number next to my name, I already leaked.
Yeah, don't leak your ranks.
Undo that. Quick, change it.
To 18 again.